Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Seeds and Weeds podcast, brought to you by Small House Farm. If you're looking to celebrate plants and the people that love them, then this is the podcast for you. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Bevan Cohen. Hello again, my friends, and welcome back to the show. We have got a packed episode for you today. We're going to be sitting down to chat with certified aromatherapist Amy Anthony, and we covered a lot of information in this interview. It was awesome. I even got Amy to share her top 5 essential oils, so you're definitely going to want to stick around for that. It was actually a pretty long interview, so we don't want to waste any time, so we can get right into it. I even have some bonus content that's not going to be in today's episode, but it is available exclusively over on the Patreon. You know, our Patreon subscribers, they help keep this show on the air, so they get all sorts of groovy perks, including some bonus content from my conversation with Amy today. Speaking of Patreon, I want to say thank you to our latest subscribers, Patty Lashbrook, Diana Marie, Michaeline Penkovich. I also want to give a shout out to Jeffrey and Krista Lambin. Now, they're not new subscribers, but they recently upgraded to the seasonal herb lovers tier just in time to get the autumn herbal gift basket that we're going to be sending out next month. So again, big thanks to all of our Patreon members. We literally could not do the show without you. If you'd like to support our program, you can find details at seedsandweedspodcast.com or at patreon.com/smallhousefarm. All right, now let's hear that interview. Amy Anthony is a certified clinical aromatherapist, owner of NYC Aromatica, and host of the Essential Aromatica podcast. Amy left her career in marketing to pursue what is closest to her heart, working with plants. And today, she's considered to be one of America's most influential aromatherapists. Amy Anthony, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Wow, Bevan, thank you so much for having me. I love chatting with plant people.
Now, you know, we've had a few different herbalists on the show in the past, but you, Amy, are our first clinical aromatherapist. So I have got a ton of questions for you, but before we jump into it, could you just tell our listeners maybe a little bit about your background and maybe something about some of the work that you're doing right now?
Yes, of course. Thank you. The long and short of it is that I grew up loving plants, being around plants. I was the nerd that was creating a herb garden when I was around the age of 15, planning out my first herb garden. But life changes, and my family and I moved to Western New York from the East Coast, and I wanted to get back to New York City, the area, and I wanted to be bicultural. I wanted to, get my degree and do all that, and I ended up in corporate America, and I spent some time there doing in the land of market research. So surveys, survey design, survey analysis, data analysis to focus groups and the qualitative side as well. And I loved it. I still do, but I need plants in my life. They ground me. And basically, I quit my corporate job thanks to the support of my spouse. I didn't do this alone. And the essential oils found me around the same time. And I was just obsessed to learn about them. What are these things? I need to know more. I suddenly needed to become certified without knowing why. And luckily, Amy Galper opened the New York Institute of Aromatherapy, which happened to be about 3 blocks from my apartment. So that was the universe saying, wake up, Amy. And suddenly I ended up being an aromatherapist and starting my own business. So that's the long and short of it. But really, it was my need to be with plants, and the essential oils are a way for me to do that.
I totally dig that. I love that you said that you were a nerd. You're in good company here. Now, I guess the first question I really got to ask here, since you're a clinical aromatherapist, what is aromatherapy? Could you give us a breakdown on what that is and how that works?
Yeah, just like with herbalism, it's a subset of herbalism. We're working with plants and their constituents. And aromatherapy, we're working specifically with aromatic plants and specifically with their distilled essences. So we take a lot of plant material, put it in a still, and we get this incredible concentrated essential oil from this process. And I can't stress enough how concentrated this is. So less is more. A textbook definition is the therapeutic application of genuine and authentic essential oils. And we can work with those for working with the physical things. So essential oils, some people might turn to them for aches and pains, sinus congestion, lung infection. Essential oils are incredibly antibacterial, antibacterial, often antimicrobial, antifungal, really anti-inflammatory, really great for wound healing and like scar tissue repair. They're antioxidant as well. We're working with terpenes. These are terpene-based things. And a lot of folks are starting to hear that word thanks to cannabis, which is all about terpenes, right? So that's an aromatic. We're also working with the connection that these aromatics have with emotions in the mind. So when we're smelling an oil, we have these olfactory nerves that dangle into air. Aromatics can attach to that. And there's nerve signals that go 2 synapses away from cortical tissue, basically, is what's happening. And a molecule attaches, and suddenly there's a bunch of stuff happening there. So we have, oh, I recognize that. Oh, that reminds me of this. Or, oh, I love the way that smells. I like this. And then there's all this neuroelectricity happening. And what's happening is the scent is attached to our hippocampus. So that's the place of memory formation and retention. It's attached and goes to the amygdala, the center for raw emotions and anger and, just like the raw sense of you and fight and flight. And also working with the hypothalamus, the major, you could say, CEO of the brain, looking for homeostasis. And I have to pause because there's just so much that happens with aromas and scent molecules.
Yeah, this is wild stuff. So let me just see if I'm following along. Basically, what you're saying is when we smell these smells, the molecules of these aromas get into our system and it causes our body to react to it in different ways, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Now, when you were mentioning using the essential oils for things, antibacterial, pain relief, that sort of thing, is this aromatherapy applications or are these topical applications?
Oh, I love the way you asked that because aromatherapy could be parsed out in so many ways. So yes, there's the topical application, but also when it is topical, you're smelling it. So it's also the pleasure, hedonic, like dislike memory thing. And that's the thing is essential oils, the aromatics, it's a mind-body connector. So it's it's and. So if I put a topical application on of something, you might notice that, oh, my arthritis feels a little better, or that ache is kind of gone for now. Oh, but I notice I feel calmer. And yes, you might feel calmer because you don't have the pain anymore, but it's deeper than that. There's more and more proof showing that these chemicals, I could call them that, work with GABA receptors. Like we have GABA receptors all over the body. We're working with dopamine receptors. We're working with oxytocin receptors. So it's this lovely thing of and with aromatherapy. It can work with pain and sickness, like a bacterial infection, and I can work with emotional and mental states.
Okay. One of the things that caught my eye when I was going through your website was that you're actually growing the herbs that you work with. But then I was reading, I thought maybe that you were distilling your own essential oils, but in the pre-interview, you mentioned that you're making hydrosols. So what's the difference here between an essential oil and a hydrosol?
Yeah, there's so much. So for folks that might not know what a hydrosol is, the example I like to give is rose water. So it takes a lot of rose petals to obtain the essential oil because the plant constituents want to give themselves to water. They're really water soluble. So if I was to take rose petals and put them in this big or small still, and I was to distill them, I might get a little bit of essential oil, but in that, because we're working with water and water is going through the still and it gets condensed and it drips out and you get forever changed water, which is called the hydrosol. So you have this substance that's no longer water. It's infused with smaller amounts of aromatic chemicals. A lot of stuff stays behind in the still. Like a lot of the stuff that herbalists will really care about stay behind in the still, but herbalists also care about the aromatics. So the hydrosol is this profound preparation that's more gentle than the essential oil. It's like the yin of the essential oil. The essential oil's yang and really active and powerful and irritating. And then you get this watery yin substance that in small amounts is really beneficial. You can cook with the hydrosol. I work with them in creams, facial sprays, in the bath. They're so powerful. And one thing I want to share, some folks might not know this, hydrosols were the preferred end result of distillation up until, let's say, about the 1800s with the age of, enlightenment. And when we started to get microscopes and a better understanding of trying, what's in our world. So they're really powerful and beautiful.
That's fascinating. So now the hydrosols, can you use these for aromatherapy as well, or do we stick to essential oils for that?
The really cool thing about hydrosols is the appreciation of the chemistry. So essential oils don't like water. water in their nature. Like they separate from the water. So essential oils get carried over on steam. They hit a condenser and out comes, this really concentrated essential oil, then this more dilute, watery substance. Like lemongrass has components that really want to give themselves to water. Same with Melissa, lemon balm, really expensive essential oil that's highly adulterated. It really wants to give itself to water. So you can work with the Hydrosol and have this really medicinal, like antimicrobial property, but it also works well with anxiety. So it's the Hydrosols are definitely worked with in aromatherapy, and they're gentle. Like my dog, we have a Shiba Inu. We're caretakers of a Shiba Inu who has car anxiety. And sometimes I will spray German chamomile on my hands and rub her ears or put it in the car to calm her. And I wouldn't do that with the essential oil.
Since a lot of these things are commercially available, folks can buy a lot of essential oils and that sort of thing. They're pretty much everywhere. What's the benefit? And I feel I already know the answer to this, but what's the benefit of distilling your own as opposed to just purchasing it?
Yeah, it's the connection. It's the process. Part of the distillation thing is I wanted to learn how it works. Like, what is the process? But I'm tooting my own horn, but I've been told, like, people that buy my Hydrosols from me, and I only sell to people I know. I don't have a retail operation. They say, like, you could feel the love and the care. You feel the time. There's a love and appreciation and a connection. There is nothing better than the information you get from asking the plant to grow, helping it thrive, and you watch it and you harvest it and you get the information from it and you get the energy when you're harvesting. And when you're by the still, the chemistry just fills the air.
Yeah, I'm digging this. So that's going to bring me to the next question. We've got a little Facebook group. We're fans from the podcast. It's a little community. And I'd mentioned to folks that we were going to have you on the show. And a few people asked to inquire about what kind of a still you have. What's that all about?
Oh, thanks. I have 2 copper stills. And if you check me out on Instagram, I really just focus on the plants. So you might see some videos of the still and on my website too. I have copper alembic stills, Al-Ambiq, and they're made in Portugal. You can't beat the copper, and copper is bacteriostatic, and it could get banged around a little bit. You don't have to worry about it breaking.
Oh, that's nice. I got 2 kids here, so I'm that durability is important with everything that we get.
So on that note, I used to use an open flame with propane, like you can go and get the propane from a hardware store for your grill. And I've converted to a hot plate, and I'm really happy with that. Even though it takes longer, I feel it's safer. Yes, I'm using electricity, but you pick your battles. And I feel it's safer around kids. Open flame isn't the best. So you pick your battles.
So now you run NYC Aromatica, and this website's great. There's videos on there, blog posts, you're offering consultations. So give us a quick rundown on NYC Aromatica. What's this all about?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out. But it's like, if you have questions about aromatherapy, I'm your resource. So the crux of it is, I mentioned I taught at this wonderful school, and unfortunately it closed. And then my love for teaching, I'm like, I need to do this. The connection I build with people to share the information about the gorgeousness of these plants and the oils. I was like, the school closed, I disappeared. I'm like, well, I missed this. So I just started to build up my website. And I've been seeing one-on-one clients, since 2015, 2016, but it was really just a necessity to continue to do what I love and to try to find a voice and share my voice in the world.
Oh yeah. I mean, your website's just packed full of information for sure. My wife, Heather, and I, we had a chance, we went to visit the lavender fields in southern France. And when I noticed, being a plant guy, I was going through all the different plants there, and they had a lot of different species and hybrids of lavender, all these different things. And a number of the fields were dedicated to the production of lavandin, which is different than true lavender. And the essential oil is different too, I would assume. So could you unpack that a little bit for me so myself and also the listeners can understand the difference between these 2 plants?
Of course. I have a class on my website based on this, actually, because I created a class for the former school. So lavender is lavandula angustifolia. angustifolia. One thing I can't stress enough about all plants, right, is if you can learn the Latin binomial, get to know the Latin name, because that is the universal language and that gets rid of a little confusion. So when you're looking at a bottle of oil or looking to buy the plant, look at the Latin name. So there's lavender, Lavandula angustifolia, lavandin. So Lavandula intermedia, there's a couple different names, but it's a naturally occurring hybrid is lavandin. And then there's something, a beautiful being called spike lavender. It goes by a couple different names, but Lavandula latifolia. The Lamiaceae family, the family that lavender is classified in, readily hybridizes with each other. Bees come and pollinate, and suddenly you might see one lavender plant growing, and next to that lavender plant that happens to be a light purple might be one with white flowers. So that's just naturally occurring. So what hybridized probably millions of years ago, whatever, thousands of years ago, is spike lavender and true lavender, or Lavandula angustifolia, they hybridized and created this hybrid that has longer spiky flowers. Like spike lavender is kind of bushier, gruffer, a little unruly looking, and grows at lower altitudes, more sea level. And then you have Lavandula angustifolia, which is shorter, more compact, smaller flowers, and really thrives up in the higher altitudes and mountains. And way back, like 100 years ago or so, people still used to wild harvest that high altitude lavender. So high altitude lavender, true lavender, Lavandula angustifolia, is known for its dreamy, sleepy qualities. It's the sedative lavender. It doesn't produce as much essential oil as lavandin, because lavandin has the genes also of spike lavender. So lavandin produces probably 3 times the amount of essential oil as lavender. But lavender has the dreamy, sleepy, airy, motherly qualities, whereas lavandin is great. I find it's really modulating and balancing and really great for aches and pains. It starts to have a little more camphor in it. Lavender is great for aches and pains as well. But again, it really shines for that sleepy, motherly, soothing quality. I hope that I just gave you a lot there, I think.
That was a lot, but that was awesome. That's exactly what I wanted. One of the things we like to do here on the show, we like to do a top 5. So I wanted to ask you if you could share with us maybe your top 5 essential oils. Maybe for folks that are new to essential oils, a good place to get started. Top 5 essential oils for the new budding aromatherapist.
Yeah, that keeps me in line, because I'm like all of them, all of the aromatics.
It's hard to pick top 5, isn't it?
Yeah, I have to say we already touched on, the Swiss Army knife, as some people call it. I think John Steele said that the Swiss Army knife of the oils is lavender. Try to get yourself I say good quality, the nose, smell it. If you're taken away and curious, you're like, this is good, right? It shouldn't smell flat. It shouldn't smell metallic. It shouldn't be single note. It should be like a poem. So lavender is the ultimate panacea. It when in doubt, it's lovely. It's one of the few ones you could put on your skin neat, as in straight, if you have a crisis like a bee sting, or really, really nasty bug bite like a bee sting. One that when you ask me to think about this, I'm like, I love all of them, but I always come back to vetiver. Vetiveria is Xanoides, or the Latin name is changed. So vetiver is a grass, and in aromatherapy, we work with the essential oil distilled from the roots. And the roots are really long, and this is a cooling, grounding, literally, right? Roots in the ground, but it's true. Oil that's wonderful for a lot of clinicians and psychiatrists, hypnotherapists will work with people with PTSD. Think of people that are really ungrounded, that are just have been crushed. Cooling, lovely, grounding. I've given presentations to like 30, 40 people, and every time I pull vetiver out and share it, literally within 30 seconds, I feel myself calm down. It's a very powerful oil. And I think it's more sustainable than, let's say, going to sandalwood and cutting down an entire tree. When we work with the grasses, I think it's more sustainable. Rosemary is another one. When in doubt, eat your herbs. Essential oils should be worked with, as needed, and eat the herbs. So rosemary is just uplifting, clarifying. It has evidence for enhancing memory, respiratory support. It's just such a lovely, accessible herb. You have to have a citrus. Many people smile. They love citruses. Sweet orange, lemon, mandarin is one of my favorites, because citrus oils are cold pressed. They're not distilled. And some of the citruses have phototoxic qualities. So like if you were to squeeze a lime juice, a lime in the sun, the oils will attract sunlight and you might get burnt. So be careful with some of those. And then another one I have to say, which we have to be careful about working with because there's sustainability issues, but frankincense is just a classic spiritual, uplifting, third eye clearing, sacred, gorgeous oil. And it also has an affinity for the respiratory tract. And that's one thing. Good breath, good mental clarity, right? I think I gave you 5.
That is 5. And you know what? What you said at the beginning there, good lavender should smell like a poem. That is fantastic. That was awesome. So that's the top 5 essential oils. I totally dig it, Amy. That was very groovy. Now, for folks that are looking to connect with you, what are the links that they need?
Thank you. Please find me on Instagram. It's mostly plant focused, of course, at NYC Aromatica. I also started a YouTube channel under the same handle, NYC Aromatica. If you go to my website, you'll find free articles and also my podcast, Essential Aromatica. My goal is to make aromatherapy accessible, fun, and practical and hands-on.
I love it. I'm going to put links to all of that, including your podcast, down in the show notes so everybody can check that out. That is super cool. Amy Anthony, thank you again so much for being on the show. That was a blast.
Thank you so much, Bevan. This is, I love sharing, and thanks for having me as a guest. I really, really enjoy you, and thank you.
And that's a wrap, my friends. We have come to the end of another show. Thanks again to Amy Anthony for joining us and to all of you for tuning in. If you enjoy what we're doing here, you can always leave us a review over on Apple Podcasts. And if you'd like to directly support the show, subscribe to our Patreon. You can find that link and many more at seedsandweedspodcast.com. This show was edited and produced by all of us here at Small House Farm, and the music you're listening to right now is a little ukulele swing from Matthew Michael Cole. I'm your host, Bevan Cohen, and we'll smell you later.